I've been thinking about what would most serve to talk about at the end of 2024, the kind of final astrology transits, the themes, what would most serve to bring through in this conversation. And I kind of wrote some stuff down, but I also kind of just want to flow with it and see where this takes us. I think there's a deeper conversation to unfold here. I think there are some insights to unfold, to come through, for you to also like receive in the way that they most serve, right? Like, let some of this stuff open doors and invite you deeper. Let some of this stuff sort of like illuminate other things in you, or like connect the dots, right? Or fill in the blanks, or the aha moments that might come through. I think there's some stuff that'll happen in this conversation that will make things make sense, or they'll shift a perspective, or they'll move you out of a stuck place. They'll kind of illuminate that breadcrumb trail on your soul path forward. So all of that said, I invite you to sit back, relax, enjoy your journey. I was just on a flight flying from the US to Ibiza or Ibiza, Spain. And I heard that a lot of times on the many flights that it took me to get over here. So that's where I am now, in case you're wondering. But really and truly, how can you prepare for this besides sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride? Is be open to receive, really like let the connections happen, let the sparks go off, let the ahas happen. Maybe that's you taking a walk while listening. Maybe that's you journaling, stream of consciousness writing. Maybe that's getting daydreaming. Maybe it's kind of like falling asleep. I know people say that they fall asleep to the podcast a lot. I find that wild. Like, I could never fall asleep to like crazy Sabrina screaming in my ears, but to each their own. I love that. I think that's beautiful. So maybe it's that too. All right, let's dive into this. Interestingly enough, there's a Mercury retrograde coming up. It starts November 25th. I want to make sure I get these dates for you. It starts November 25th. It goes until December 15th. Isn't that interesting? So it's pretty perfect in that we get this review period before the end of the year. I feel like this sets us up perfectly for the beginning of the year. Review. We get to really and truly, Mercury is the messenger of the gods, the messenger of the underworld, and he's bringing us specifically messages from Sagittarius themes in our lives. I'll tell you what that means in a minute, but when Mercury is retrograde, it's not about messing up communications. Like, yeah, blah, blah. That's like surface level, emails don't work and whatever, stuff goes wrong. But Mercury is literally the psychopomp journeying deep into you, right? To get messages from things that are normally not being translated into the mind. What the fuck does this mean, Sabrina? Well, he's getting messages from Sagittarius, which is higher thinking. It's also expansion of consciousness. So Mercury, your mind, is literally going inward to get messages about your highest path, your spiritual awakening, what it is that you're really truly called to seek. Sagittarius is a seeking energy. It's a fire energy. It's an expansive energy. You think higher learning, university, you think international travel. That's Sagittarius. Many of those things. It's also teaching, learning, but it's really expansive energy. So if you think about it, it's like expanding. If we were to get rid of all those words, some of those words might spark for you, some of those words might not, but it's you expanding, your expansion. And so Mercury, right, end of the year, how do we work with this? How do we get the most out of what's left of this year? Is letting this time period, letting this Mercury retrograde, giving yourself some time and some space to review, right? To review what it is that you're called to make pivots and adjustments around so that you can continue your expansion, your growth. Sagittarius is personal growth, spiritual growth. It's all of that. So really, spiritual growth, personal growth is going to be highlighted for the rest of the year. The rest of the year, spiritual growth, personal growth, super in focus, but it's what are the pivots to take? Review, revise, readjust. So that's really what Mercury is going to be asking about. So with regards to your growth, how do you review, revise, revisit what it is you've been doing to like come into a deeper alignment with your path forward? There's a lot of stuff for these last 6 weeks of the year that are about coming into alignment with your path forward. And I think most of what we're going to talk about today is about tips and tricks and the archetypal energies that are really loud and how they can help you to come into deeper alignment with like who you are now, not who you were, not who you were 6 months ago, not who you were 6 days ago, not who you were 6 years ago. I think this moment in time, these last 6 weeks, they're really calling to unhook the hooks. You know, what are the things that we have been asked to let go of and we're just not letting go of? What are the things that we've been, you know, advised to step out of and we're just not doing it? Now, I don't want to focus. Here's the other thing. This is another warning. Let's go into this. This will be like theme number 2, aspect number 2 to talk about is this warning around putting too much focus on the old, too much focus on healing the wounds, too much, like when you add worry to things, you also like hook into them more. When you add attention to things, you also hook into them more. So isn't this interesting? This isn't an invitation to like spiritually bypass at all. It's an invitation to get really discerning about where you're putting your focus. An invitation to get really discerning about where you're putting your focus. Am I putting my focus on the old things in a way that's keeping me in the old things? Am I putting my focus on healing in a way that's keeping me stuck in healing when I'm actually being called to move forward? This is big. This is huge. Let me say this again because I know this is going to get a lot of you. Am I focused on healing and that's keeping me stuck healing when I'm to be moving forward in a different way? This is a tricky territory to get into, but it's really, really big. And this is what the remainder of 2024 is going to ask us to get out of. Is I'm focused on my trauma. And I think I'm healing my trauma, but the fact that I'm focused on my trauma is the reason I'm stuck in my trauma. Is that making sense? Do you see what I'm saying? Versus if I were focused on creating a new life, where focus goes, energy flows. So instead of being stuck in my trauma, because where my focus is at is my trauma, and I'm just stuck on this repetitive loop, right? And instead, the way to heal the trauma is to actually take a step forward out of the trauma, is to actually turn. This is a Sag gift. This is Sagittarius's gift. It's one of their greatest gifts, is just turn your attention. Just turn your consciousness. Like that's the magic of your consciousness, is it's where are you putting your consciousness? Because that's where you're aiming your life force. That's where you're giving your love and your creative juju. Where you put your consciousness is where you're going to create at. Where is it? So I think that's theme number 2, is to get super discerning about where to put consciousness. And that Mercury retrograde is going to help, because that's Sagittarius, right? And it's giving you the review, revise, revisit energy. Mercury, psychopomp, messenger of the gods. He's delivering the message of like, hey, enough focusing on the problem, enough focusing on the trauma, the inner child wounding, because you could sit there for a lifetime. You could sit there for a lifetime. You could just go deeper and deeper, and you know, and then you dig up more trauma and more trauma. You go through your trauma, then you go through your mom's trauma, your grandma's trauma, your whole, you know, ancestral line trauma, and then you're like, well, fuck it, let's just go for the collective trauma. And now you're just healing trauma. And that might be your path. That's some people's path for sure. But it's a really good time these last 6 weeks of the year to get super clear. And a way that I like to get really clear is to feel into, does this bring me joy? Does this light me up? Does this turn me on? Does this turn me? If it turns you on and there's a feeling of purpose, there's a feeling of fulfillment with that joy, there's got to be a flavor of joy, because we can feel purposeful from a self-sacrificial place. And that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. From a savior self-sacrificial place. Well, I feel like I'm on purpose. I feel like I'm of service. I feel like, but your light is dimming. Your light is dimming. Like, that's maybe theme number 3. There's a lot of light that wants to turn on in you. There's a lot of light. There's more light available to us to switch on. There are more, let me talk about this in other terms that might help to spark things or open things for you. There's a lot of sacred technologies within you that want to turn on. There's a lot of capacities, potentials within you that want to turn on. It's like more and more different, I'm just going to say technologies want to switch on. This is going to be, we'll talk about this kind of in terms of Pluto moving into Aquarius. As within, so without. We are about to, and we are, it's already happening, right? Pluto's been going in and out of Aquarius since 2023. So this has been happening, right? It's already in motion. Pluto into Aquarius is like the new technology. It's new technology. It's going to bring in a lot of new technology. It's just what's going to happen. We're already watching an AI, right? Super AI. Just the amount of technology is just mind-blowing. But think about it, mind-blowing. The amount of technology out there is also the amount of technology happening inside. That's on super speed. It's on super speed. It's on super speed. Like becoming superhuman. Let's just say this is our next theme. Becoming superhuman. Your capacities we're all having these capacities. Our consciousness can do other things. The things that our love can do. The things that our life force can do. The ways that our minds can start to work. It's a lot of mind stuff will start happening. The way that what the mind can cognize, how far the mind can go, the information the mind can take in, decipher, discern, spit out, the solutions that the mind can have involved. It's all being rewired. There's more and more and more and more and more that wants to switch on. So feeling into you're like, okay, that sounds great, Sabrina. Yeah, I want to be superhuman. I want to switch on my special gifts. I want to switch on more of these like dormant capacities and these potentials within me. Like, what are they? Well, one, they're unique to you. They're going to be unique to you. But 2, it's to put ourselves in places with people who are opening up these doorways. There's this way that in Aquarius, this energy, it's like this air energy where it's contagious. Someone left this on like the last YouTube comment on Pluto going into Aquarius. By the way, if you haven't seen that video, that's a really good one to dive into right after this. Like you'll find a link up here, link below, and we'll put it at the end of this episode too. But Pluto into Aquarius, you will get so much more out of this conversation once you listen to that. But on a comment someone left, so whoever that was, thank you so much, left a comment about these things switching on, these capacities switching on, but it's that when we're around others, it's going to be able to be dispersed and disseminated much more, but like much more readily, right? There's a reason we're going on tour next year. There's a reason we're doing in-person events next year. We've not done in-person events like this. We haven't done this. We've done like 1, maybe 2 in-person events next year. We have California scheduled. That's a 5-day. Then we have Berlin, 2-day. London is a 2-day. Sydney is a 2-day. We haven't done that. We haven't done it. Berlin, London, Sydney, like those are bigger events. More of us. And there's this amazing energetic that we can tap into coming up. It's starting now. It's already here. It's starting now. But this amazing energetic we can tap into. Like if you've heard me say the words like my Shakti talks to your Shakti. Like the wisdom in me, sacred wisdom, that's Shakti, right? The life force in me talks to the life force in you, right? But we have this capacity for all these different wisdom aspects in us to talk to, or ours to be heard by someone else, to be lit up by someone else, right? It's like a vibration. You know when like someone's just like smiling and they're just like exuding joy, like a baby, right? Sometimes you're so shitty, like you can't receive a human transmission, like an adult transmission, but like a baby, and they're just like in like fucking joy, right? And you just like can't help but receive the transmission of joy, and you like kind of walk away. This happened to me in the airport on the way here to Ibiza. I'm walking away at the airport, I'm just like giggling. I'm like giggling in joy because this little baby's like beautiful transmission. That's the thing, but that's on hyper speed coming up, right? Because the age of Aquarius, it's all about connection, and it's like zippy quick connection. The zippy quick connection. Here's a thing that we're going to want to focus on. This is, if this feels true for you, might not, but focusing on grounding it in, getting grounded, staying grounded, having grounded practices. It's going to be really powerful, so that it's not just an experience. We become it. So it's not just an experience, right? So there's going to be 22 people coming here in this space to do 5 days of priestess training, right? And we are going to work with these high voltage archetypal energies, right? All for the sake of channeling grace and light and more love into the world, in our work, into our families, however we're called to priestess in the world, right? To be a channel for grace, to be a channel for sacred energy. But we're going to work with these multiple types of sacred energies. So this is what's on offer. This is partially what's going to start to happen in the age of Aquarius, right? And sacred energies might be like a little bit too much. It might be like, oh my gosh, what are you talking about? Just think about sacred technologies. Just think about different gifts, different modalities switching on you, different capacities. And those capacities, like if you're around someone who has a genius for whatever, that genius that they have for whatever can spark and illuminate and turn on the genius that you have for that same thing. If that's in your blueprint, it'll turn it on. And so this connection, collaboration, co-creation, this like being together and like being open. We have to be able to be open. We all have boundaries. You can set a boundary up for this. Like, no. Like I was saying, many of us don't want to receive. We don't want to receive a transmission from an adult because we have a lot of strong boundaries around, but we'll receive it from an innocent infant. Like, well, that's an easy one to take in. I haven't developed shells and armoring and, all kinds of shit to not like receive that. And so of course, discernment, you don't want to take anything in, like that's ridiculous. But to make very conscious choices, and to go to places, to read books, to listen to things, to participate in training programs, to do the things where there's a resonance. Like maybe you're like, wow, there's like a resonance to ReWilding. I don't fucking know. Maybe you don't have a resonance to ReWilding. That's fine. But whatever it is that there's a resonance to, and you have this feeling. So have your spidey senses on and be looking out for like what you feel is going to switch on your magic, which is going to switch on more of your capacities, more of your genius. Like, for instance, I'm super called to right now, like, this is ridiculous. This sounds ridiculous, but this is me. I'm loving Seth Godin at the moment. I'm loving him. I'm loving the way his mind works. You might not even know who Seth Godin is, but like marketing, business genius, leadership genius, strategy. He just wrote this book on strategy. And there's a transmission happening. Like I'm also wildly excited about like mind health, brain health at the moment. These are the things I'm excited about. And so I'm actively making decisions to be in that energy that's turning more of my mind on. It's turning more wisdom centers on, or turning more dormant. I don't even know how to necessarily talk about it in clear, solid ways. But let me rein it in and just kind of wrap up this sort of a theme is we have a capacity now more than ever to turn on our gifts, to turn on dormant capacities within, to turn on human potential, your human potential. Just look at it externally. We are turning on potential in technology in a really powerful way. It's the same thing inside, turning on technology inside of self in a really powerful way. And it's, what is the technology that you're called to turn on? Like for me, it's a lot of mind lately, right? For you, what is it? Is it heart technology? Is it priestessing technology, right? Are you called to be on the California priestess training retreat? This Ibiza one's full. I'm sorry. I know, it'd be so great to fly here this week, right? To come hang out with us. But the California one is open. There's still potentially a few early bird places left. I don't know. Depends on when you're watching this. Depends on when you look. Might not even be spots left by the time you're watching this. But anyways, that's there. That's happening at the end of February into March in California on the Dragon Ley line. Talk about some sacred technology. But what are you called to switch on? What technology are you called to switch on? I'm going to leave it there. I want to leave it there because I feel like I've opened the door and I've given you like a torch or a flashlight to shine into that territory. And the rest of this year is really good to get clear on that. So the rest of 2024 is really good to get clear. Like, I am really clear that I want to turn on my spiritual gifts. I'm really clear that I want to turn on my sacred sexuality or just my sexuality. I'm really clear that I want to turn on my creativity. I'm really clear that I want to turn on my health. I know I can be of like a healthier state. I'm really clear. What is it that you want to turn on? That's the question. What do I want to turn on? What am I called to turn on? What am I called to turn on? Where do I feel like there's juice, there's magic, there's just something there for me? What am I called to turn on? And then make those hard choices. Make those, put your, like how some people will say, put your money where your mouth is, right? Or don't just talk the talk, walk the talk, right? It's taking action. It's like doing the things, making those decisions, doing the things, taking the action. Okay, let's feel into a couple other themes for the end of 2024. I do want to check our time so I don't get too wildly crazy. Pluto into Aquarius, kind of talked about it here in this last theme a little bit. Pluto into Aquarius, here's the thing I want to talk about that we're not necessarily getting. I think, like common parlance, we're not getting it in the conversations around Pluto into Aquarius. In like the collective vibe, you might get it. Great if you do. But Pluto is, everyone's saying deconstruction. Pluto and death, death. Pluto is the rebirth at the moment of the death. Pluto is the recreation of something new at the moment of the deconstruction of something, right? Pluto, like it's that like 0 point. It's that 0 point. I talk about this in that Pluto episode. Again, if you haven't seen that Pluto episode, go dive into it. There's good practices in there. And talk a lot about this, but that 0 point, and it's like we've collectively been like landslided into just like the deconstruction. And I think some of us might be, you feel for you, this could be wrong, chuck it in the fucking bucket if this doesn't resonate, that's great. But we might be missing the opportunity of what is being created as something falls away. Like, I was thinking about this, the moment a woman gives birth, right? It's the death of the maiden. It's death of the maiden. No longer will she ever be a maiden. It's death of the maiden. That's a death. It's a death of the maiden. That moment, that exact moment, the death of the maiden, the birth of the mother. Death of the maiden, birth of the mother. It happens at the exact same moment in time. But collectively, weirdly, we're looking at the death of the maiden. You feel for you. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're looking at the death of the maiden and the birth of the mother. But there's a magic in both of them. There's a genius in both of them. There's something to be gained in both of them. In both of them happening simultaneously. So the moment, like, your relationship ends, but you're just staring at relationship ends. Oh my God, woe is me. I'm so fucking sad. The death of the relation, blah, 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 whatever. But at that exact same moment, it's the birth. It's the birth of a totally new identity without that. It's the birth of something totally new without that. But we're so stuck in the grieving of the death. Now, we don't want to skip out on the grieving. Grieving is an important process. It's an incredibly important process. But don't miss the magic of what's being born, of what it is that is being birthed, what has been birthed, because sometimes things have been birthed and we don't even see it. And so we miss it, or we take a longer time to step into it. It takes us a longer time. Like the moment, the birth of, you as this new person, instead of being curious about it and bringing, where attention goes, where focus goes, energy flows, you're giving it no attention, you're giving it no juice, you're giving it no consciousness. So it's not even coming alive. It's like the birth of the baby, and then you just didn't breastfeed it, so the baby doesn't grow, and it's also like the deconstruction of things, like whatever has left your life in the last, we could even say 19 years, as Pluto's been going through, whatever, we don't have to get all like astrological about it, but whatever you've let go, whatever's been shed, whatever's died, to also bring some focus to, and what was born in that, and how do I create from here? How do I move forward from here? This is an important one for the rest of the year. How do I move forward from here? Out of the ashes, as you, Phoenix, rises out of the ashes. What are my wings? What is my path forward? All right, I want to go in the next theme from this because I just got it. I think there's another theme for the rest of the year around trust of self, trust of intuition, trust of guidance, trust of only getting the next step. Instead of waiting for 10 steps, instead of waiting for the full picture, a lot of times, we get one step. We get one intuition. We get one move forward. It's like, but there's a part of us sometimes that wants to like know the whole, like if you play chess, instead of knowing like the one best move in chess, that piece, you want like all of the moves, and life just doesn't really work like that. Like life doesn't work like that because it's in constant motion. It's constantly creating itself. Every moment it's changing. The butterfly effect. Someone on the other side of the world touches a butterfly wing. Everything changes. And imagine everything's changing all of the time, constantly. I listened to this thing once and it was so beautiful. And it was like, when you get an intuitive hit, you get a breadcrumb on that trail, you know the next step. That is your flight plan in that moment. You wait too long, that flight plan has changed. Isn't that interesting? I loved hearing that because like everything has rearranged itself and we're still stuck clinging to, that one intuitive hit we got 6 months ago. But everything has changed. I had to literally sit myself down today and say that to myself, like, Sabrina, that was true 6 months ago. And that was great guidance 6 months ago. And that's changed. That's no longer valid. You're actually blocking yourself now because you're still operating from, that's the highest move. That's the highest way of holding the energetic side. It was like whatever. It was like a business sort of a thing. It was like a business sort of a guidance, like here's the best way to grow. I mean, ReWilding's growing like gangbusters, right? Our team is growing, our beautiful, amazing community, you all. Like there's more of us. It's wild, it's wonderful, and I'm crazy grateful for it. It's crazy hard. It's fucking hard. Like, let me not lie about that. Like, shit's hard when people say like, when things grow, it's blah, blah, blah. Anyways, back to this point of can we learn to trust a little more ourselves more, trust our intuitive system a little bit more, trust the insights, the quick hits, right? This moving into the age of Aquarius, this is a big fucking thing. This is a big deal. This is a big deal. The energetics are shifting. We as humans have shifted. Our consciousness has shifted. Human consciousness is constantly changing. And so these things are, where are we at now? All right. Let me talk a little bit more. I think that feels good. Let me rein it in a little more. I want to talk a little bit about Saturn at the end of the year. Let's get like a little bit more detailed on some of the astrology stuff. So I've talked about Mercury Retrograde. I've given you the dates of Mercury Retrograde. He goes retrograde November 25th to December 15th. He I was trying to see if I could tell you about the shadow phases. Whatever. I will do a Mercury retrograde deep dive. We'll talk more about that in another conversation. But Saturn goes direct November 15th. This is an interesting date. You might want to mark this date down. This is a weird day. So November 19th, Saturn goes direct. Saturn is karma. He's the taskmaster. He's disciplinarian. They say he like makes things hard so that we can get to mastery. So he's going to be just loud in November. When they're stationing, they get louder. So there's big Saturn energy, Father Time, Lord of Karma, big Saturn energy around the 15th. There's also a full moon conjunct Uranus. That's revolutionary and that's new. So we have the taskmaster drilling down, going direct. He's finally going to be done with his retrograde journey and he's going to be like, all right, what'd you learn? And let's move forward. So he's ready to move us forward. And he's like the sea goat, right? He's like 1 foot in front of the other up the mountain. That's how he operates. Can you feel that? It's like 1 foot in front of the other up a mountain. So it's like turtle pace. But when you get it, you get it. You know, when you take a step, you take a fucking step. Saturn's also the realist. Realist in, let's get real about this. Let's have a reality check. He's also a realist in that he's a manifester. He's the one that like helps us to anchor it into reality. So him going direct, love this. This is good. He messes with this Mercury retrograde in big ways. He's going to add this discipline. He's going to add karma into the mix. All right, let me try to boil this down a little bit, but I want to give you some dates really quick. So Mercury squares Saturn. The sun also squares Saturn December 5th. This is a big piece of Mercury's retrograde. So remember, Mercury's on a retrograde journey. The overall Mercury journey, retrograde, is in that sign of Sag. So remember, it's personal growth. It's your expansion. It's your expansion. It's your personal growth. It's your growth. It's your spiritual growth. It's your personal growth. It's your expansion. This is important for evolutionary shit, right? Like, this is just your evolutionary shit, like soul evolution, personal growth. Mercury is going to get some information. He's going to talk to Saturn on his way, and he's going to go, hey, Father Time, Lord of Karma, what's this Yahoo not getting? Isn't that great, right? You have like Mr. Miyagi. He's Mr. Miyagi, wax on, wax off, right? Karate Kid. He's Gandalf, the wizened wizard. And he's like, I'm going to say these words. I'm going to test you. I want to test this person, right? They need more practice. They need, like, what can we throw at them? Mercury's a trickster too. Like, Mercury in retrograde messes with the physical world. It messes with the physical world. It's trickster. That's where the communication stuff comes in with Mercury retrograde. Oh my gosh, don't send emails, don't sign contracts, yada, 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 because he can mess with the physical world. And now that he's got Saturn on his side, he can move physical things much more. He'll be able to move in the physical world much differently in this retrograde in ways he normally couldn't, because he's got Saturn, the realist, the one who manifests it into reality, into the physical world. If you are having a hard time manifesting things, creating like the life of your dreams, like bringing a dream into reality, Saturn, you need to do some Saturn work. Saturn is good to work with. He's an archetype that we work with in IX. Some of you are in IX. Go do your Saturn work. Some of you have already done it. Some of you, Saturn is coming your way. Maybe if you want to do some Saturn work, come on tour with me, because we're working with these archetypes on tour, London, Berlin, Sydney. Those weekend events, we'll be working with them. We might work with them in priestess training in California too, because he's just such a karmic point and he's so important for us grounding things in and us making things manifest. He's literally the gatekeeper between like the spiritual world and the reality world. That's Saturn. He's magic. He's great. So he squares Saturn. He squares the sun. I mean, so Saturn's getting up in the mix. He does that on December 5th. And then again, he'll square Mercury at the end of December after Mercury comes out of retrograde, right? So when Mercury stations direct, he'll do it again. That's interesting, right? That's interesting. Another piece that I want to talk about with regards to astrology, Saturn goes direct on the 15th, totally messes with the Mercury retrograde. That full moon conjunct Uranus, that's revolutionary. The full moon conjunct Uranus just a few days before Pluto goes into Aquarius. Aquarius is a sign of Uranus. That's kind of similar energy. Uranus is more radical though, more lightning bolt, more like wake up. More, it's like Kundalini awakener. You can expect the unexpected, right? Like he comes out of left field and I heard someone talk about him as like the great destroyer. The great destroyer. I think there's like a bit of like dark God in him, right? Like dark masculine, dark feminine, where it's just like, I will cause a life tsunami so that you wake the fuck up, right? Like, and I will mess with stuff so that you move. So him to be conjunct this full moon on the 15th, just days before Pluto goes into Aquarius, I think it's a good little wake-up call. I think that full moon on the 15th, we could treat it as a wake-up call. What do I need to wake up to? What am I waking up to? What again, more pivots? Like what pivots can I make? Okay. Then we go into Sagittarius season on the 21st. Like I said, Mercury Retrograde begins on the 25th of November. We come into December. We have a new moon on the 1st, on the 4th, 5th. We have that Sun square Saturn, Mercury conjuncts the Sun. That's the Mercury cazimi. That's the midway point of Mercury's retrograde. So the Sun conjunct Mercury, squares Saturn, and opposes Jupiter. I like this. I like this. So the two big players in the Mercury retrograde, obviously in the sign of Sag, personal growth, right? Your evolution, incredibly important, Mercury retrograde. Also talks to Jupiter. Jupiter is the grace bomber. Jupiter's the great grace bomb. Jupiter's the great expander. Jupiter is associated with the sign of Sagittarius. So this is even more of that energy, but expanded, bigger. Let me make it bigger. If you didn't get it, I'm going to make it bigger. Right? And I'm also going to support your expansion. I'm going to support your growth. So I like that. On the 6th, we have Mars going retrograde. So December 6th, Mars goes retrograde. Interestingly, though, Saturn's direct, but it's like our action forward, because Mars is an action forward, a masculine energy, right? That takes action in the world. But Mars is like quick action. It's not like always super grounded action. It's not always like action that's been well thought out. It's not always so to me, Mars going retrograde, yeah, there's a little bit of fire that pulls back. There's a little bit of passion that pulls back. There's a little bit of warrior action that pulls back. But the fact that Saturn is going direct, it's like action forward is just going to be a little bit more well thought out and grounded. So it's like, the hare versus the tortoise. It's like the way that we really want to move forward these next 6 weeks for the rest of the year is in tortoise way. Real aligned, real grounded, like steady pace wins the race. That's the energy for the rest of the year. Okay, let me give you a couple more dates. Neptune goes direct on the 7th. Neptune's the mystic, so there's going to be some good mystic vibes going on. There's some cool stuff going on with Venus. I'll talk more about this when we get closer to that astrology. Like Venus comes into conjunction with Pluto. She does a thing with Neptune. Venus, that's the feminine side in us. That's also relationships. It could also be pointing to relationships still in that like shifting place, especially with her conjunct Pluto. Could be some shifts in relationships, some changes around our relationship lives. Could also be feminine initiation. I really like that because that's Pluto, essentially Hades, right? Is who initiates Persephone, initiates the feminine, drags her into the underworld and initiates her into her magic. And this could be part of, for some who are on like a feminine awakening path. You don't have to be a woman. This isn't about being a woman. This is the gender. This is not gender. This is the energy, the feminine energy. For those on a feminine path, this could also be a really good time for awakening to how we were talking about turning on more of that energy, turning on more of the magic, more of those modalities, more of those hidden gifts. For some of us, like I was called to the mind and like the brain at the moment. Some of us might be called to waking up the feminine mysteries. Waking up the feminine mysteries, really supportive what's going on with Venus. And a couple of other, and Pluto, Neptune, a couple of other things. So then we have a full moon on the 15th. That's the same day Mercury goes direct. This is interesting, right? It's interesting. Saturn goes direct on November 15th. with a full moon. Mercury goes direct on December 15th with a full moon. That's just interesting to me. Venus trines Jupiter. That's another good aspect for Venus. Sun moves into Capricorn on the 21st. The 24th, there's something going on that really caught my eye. Jupiter square Saturn. Remember we already talked about Saturn? We talked about Jupiter. Jupiter, the grace bomb, the expander. Square Saturn. So it's another more of this like Mercury retrograde theme in Sagittarius, this growth. Jupiter, growth, personal growth, your expansion, square to Saturn. Square to Saturn, the taskmaster, Mr. Miyagi. It's like Mr. Miyagi literally coming in and saying, for your personal growth, this. This. For the reality of things, let's get real about things. For your greatest path forward, your evolution, right? Your expansion, this. It's just good. It's just a good lineup. It's a great lineup. I love this. I love these last 6 weeks of the astrology. I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to invite you to come to California. If that being a channel for grace, this is not a retreat for everybody. I mean, it's 5 days of essentially hell. It's 5 days of like grace and hellfire. I mean, it's like the lightest of the light and the darkest of the dark, because we're bringing the lightest of the light into our darkest of the dark in some parts of this. It's training. It's training to be a channel for grace. It's not the easiest path on the planet at all. Those of you who've been called to be a light worker, a tantrika, a priestess of some sort of a channel for love and light and grace, we all know, like in order to be a clearer vessel, it takes refinement. It takes purification. It takes us getting our own wounds and our own fears and our own blocks and our own all that stuff out of the way. So it's definitely not something for everybody. Definitely not something for everybody, but it might be something for you. What I would say is something that is for everybody are the weekend immersions, the weekend tours that are happening in London, Berlin, and Sydney. That might be a good holiday gift. Maybe you just buy tickets for you and your partner and you're like, hey, guess what, babe? We're going to Berlin. We're going to do a little bit of rewilding our lives. We're going to go into our sexuality. We're going to go into our health. We're going to go into our finances. We're going to really shake things up to wake things up. That's what those weekends are. That might be something that is up your alley. And if not, I also, of course, just totally send you a lot of love. And a lot of grace, like a lot of grace for your path forward, whatever that is. All right. Just huge love to you. Go watch the Pluto into Aquarius video next if you have not. All right. Maybe I'll see you in the comments. Love you all.